The story of Jenny and Sumit has always been one of the most polarizing in the 90-Day Fiancé universe. It's a narrative built on a foundation of deception, shocking lie that somehow against all odds blossomed into what we were told was true love. We all remember the moment the truth came out. Sumit, the young man from India, wasn't Michael Jones, the handsome English gentleman from his profile. He was a catfish. It was a staggering betrayal. Yet, Jenny forgave him. For a decade, we've watched them fight his family, his culture, and their own past to be together. We've seen the tears, the heartbreak, and the eventual triumph of their wedding. We accepted the story that Sumit made a foolish, but that the love he found with Jenny was real, the one beautiful accident that came from a pathetic lie. But what if that's not the story at all? What if the original lie wasn't a mistake, but a profession? What if the love story we've been watching for years is actually the cover-up for a crime? An explosive report has just been broken by a team of investigative journalists, and it's based on the testimony of a whistleblower, a man who claims to have worked with Sumit Singh. And according to him, Michael Jones was not a one-off persona. It was an asset. An alias in an organized professional catfishing ring runs out of a New Delhi call center designed to defraud lonely Westerners out of their life. This report, Jenny wasn't his one true love. She was just the one mark he couldn't get rid of. If your mind is already spinning and you, like me, feel like everything you thought you knew about this story is about to be turned upside down, then you need to do 3 things for me right now. Hit that like button, subscribe to the Tell All tapes, and ring that notification bell because we are about to go down a rabbit hole so deep it might just change the way you see 90-Day Fiancé forever. This is not just gossip. This is an alleged criminal conspiracy. And we have all thega-trenching details. The story begins not on a reality TV set, but in the flickering fluorescent light of a true crime documentary. The documentary titled Digital Ghosts, The Guru Graham Connection was a deep dive into the sophisticated call center scams that have plagued Western countries for years. Detailed how these operations had evolved from simple tech support scams into complex, emotionally devastating romance rackets. A man sitting in his small apartment in Noida watched it. Let's call him Rohan, the pseudonym he's using to protect himself from his former employers. As the documentary detailed the psychological tactics, the scripting, and the grooming process used by these professional catfish, a cold sweat trickled down Rohan's spine. He wasn't just watching a documentary. He was watching a replay of his old life. He recognized the playbook. He recognized the methodology because a decade ago, he was one of them. And so, he claims was Sumit Singh. Rohan told journalists that seeing Sumit and Jenny's faces flash across his television screen on 90-Day Fiancé over the years had been a source of private torment for him. He saw a man he knew as a quiet, calculating colleague, now playing the part of a lovelorn romantic hero. He saw a woman, Jenny, who was supposed to be a target, a nightingale, as they called them in the office, now being presented to the world as a soulmate. The guilt, he said, was a constant, dull ache. The documentary was the final push. He realized that by staying silent, he was complicit in a lie far grander than anyone could possibly imagine. He decided to come forward. He reached out to an investigative journalist, Alia Khan, who had a reputation for untangling complex digital crimes. His first email was cryptic, simply stating, "Know the truth about the 90-Day Fiancé star Sumit Singh. Michael Jones was not his idea. It was a company profile, and Jenny was his failed assignment." Alia Khan was, of course, skeptical. The world of reality TV is filled with rumors and disgruntled acquaintances, but something in Rohan's tone, a mixture of fear and conviction, compelled her to arrange a secure, encrypted call. Over the next several hours, Rohan laid out a story so detailed and chilling that it left the seasoned journalist speechless. He described an operation run out of a nondescript office building in a dusty corner of New Delhi. It wasn't your typical sprawling call center. It was a boutique operation, maybe 30 or 40 employees, all young, fluent in English, and tech-savvy. They weren't selling anything. They were selling a fantasy. The operation, internally known as Project Starlight, specialized in long-con romance scams. Their targets were almost exclusively middle-aged or older women in Canada, the UK, and Australia. The company's founder, a shadowy figure known only as Mr. Gupta, believed this demographic was the perfect mark. Often lonely, financially secure, and less likely to be suspicious of a man who used flowery, old-fashioned language. Rohan explained that new recruits like him and Sumit underwent a rigorous 6-week training program. They were taught how to create convincing fake profiles, how to use VPNs and burner numbers to mask their location, and most importantly, Borson. They were taught the method. This was the company's proprietary system of psychological manipulation, a step-by-step guide to making a stranger fall in love with a ghost. And part of that training involved studying the company's portfolio of pre-made field-tested personas. There was Captain Alex, the ruggedly handsome pilot who was always in a different exotic location. There was Dr. Ben, the compassionate Doctors Without Borders physician working in a war-torn country. And then there was the company's most reliable, most successful persona, Michael Jones, the lonely English engineer. According to Rohan, Michael Jones was a masterpiece of fictitious character design. The backstory was always the same. A 30-some structural engineer based in London. A widower whose wife had died tragically young. He was cultured, enjoyed poetry, classic rock, and long walks. He was portrayed as a man of substance and old-world charm, a stark contrast to the men the targets might meet on dating apps. The profile was a carefully curated collection of photos, all licensed from an obscure stock photo website featuring a moderately handsome, non-threatening-looking model. The call center had a library of hundreds of these photos. Michael at a pub. Michael walking his golden retriever. Michael thoughtfully looking out over the English countryside. It was a complete illusion. Rohan alleges that Sumit did not invent Michael Jones. He was simply assigned a profile. It was his job from AM to PM 6 days a week to be Michael Jones. He, along with 4 other agents, all operated various Michael Jones accounts simultaneously targeting different women across the globe. The scam, as Rohan outlined it, was a meticulous 3-phase operation. Phase 1 was the inception. This was the love bombing stage, which could last anywhere from 3 to 6 months. The agents, following a detailed script, would shower the target with affection. They would send good morning texts, poems they wrote, pulled from a database of romantic literature, and spend hours in late-night chats, listening to the women's problems, learning their insecurities, their dreams, their deepest vulnerabilities. The goal was to create an unshakable emotional bond, to become the most important person in the target's life. They were trained to mirror the target's language, to echo her sentiments, to become her perfect counterpart. Sumit, Rohan claimed, was particularly good at this phase. He was patient, empathetic, and had a knack for saying exactly what the women wanted to hear. Phase 2 was the foundation of crisis. Once the emotional dependency was established, the agent would slowly begin to introduce elements of struggle and hardship into Michael Jones's life. It would start small. A business deal that was facing unexpected hurdles. A piece of vital equipment that broke down. A younger sister who needed help with university fees. These were tests designed to gauge the target's willingness to offer financial support. They wouldn't ask for money directly at this stage. They were planting seeds, conditioning the target to see Michael as a good man, constantly beset by misfortune, making the eventual larger crisis feel plausible. Phase 3, the final stage, was the storm. This is where the trap was sprung. The agent would manufacture a sudden catastrophic emergency. A terrible car accident, a sudden life-threatening medical diagnosis, being mugged, and having all his money and documents stolen while on a business trip abroad. The stories were dramatic, terrifying, and always required a large immediate wire transfer of thousands of dollars. The script for this phase was precise. The agent was to sound desperate, ashamed to ask for help, and promise to pay it all back as soon as the crisis was averted. Once the money was received, the agent would begin a slow fade, becoming more and more distant until Michael Jones disappeared forever, leaving the victim heartbroken and thousands of dollars poorer. The operation was brutally effective. Rohan estimates that in the 2 years he and Sumit worked there, Project Starlight built victims out of well over $1 million. But with Jenny, something went catastrophically wrong for Sumit. He was deep in phase 1, building the emotional connection. He had been Michael Jones for her for months, weaving the intricate web of lies as instructed. But he underestimated Jenny's impulsiveness and the depth of her genuine feelings. Before he could even begin to see the foundation of crisis, Jenny did something no target was ever supposed to do. She bought a plane ticket. She announced she was flying to India to meet the man she loved in person. Rohan described the day Sumit got that news in the office. It was sheer panic. He said Sumit went white as a sheet. An agent losing control of a mark was a serious offense, but a mark physically showing up in their city, that was unheard of. It was a DEFCON 1 situation. Their manager, Mr. Gupta, was furious. A physical meetup risked exposing the entire operation. It could lead to police reports, media attention, and the end of their multi-million-dollar enterprise. The standard protocol in the situation was simple. Initiate the ghost protocol. The agent was to immediately block the target on all platforms, delete the email account, and sever all contact. The Michael Jones persona would simply cease to exist. Mr. Gupta ordered Sumit to do just that. But Sumit, for reasons Rohan can only speculate on, hesitated. Perhaps he was scared of what Jenny might do if she arrived in a foreign country and realized she'd been scammed. A jilted, furious American woman going to the embassy or the local police was a nightmare scenario. Or perhaps, and this is the more chilling possibility, the story of Jenny and Sumit has always been framed as one of the strangest, most emotional love stories in reality television history. A love that crossed borders, cultures, generations, and families. A love that survived lies, humiliation, rejection, and public scrutiny. For years, viewers were told that what began as a foolish online deception somehow transformed into something real, something pure, something worth fighting the entire world for. But what if that version of the story is incomplete? What if the truth is far darker, far more calculated, and far more disturbing than anyone ever imagined? What if the lie that started it all was never a mistake, never a moment of weakness, but part of a system designed to exploit human loneliness? This is not a recap. This is not gossip. This is the beginning of an alleged exposé that challenges everything we think we know about Jenny, Sumit, and the story sold to millions of viewers worldwide. When audiences were first introduced to Jenny, she was presented as a vulnerable American woman searching for love later in life. She met a charming, polite, poetic man online named Michael Jones. He was attentive, emotionally intelligent, gentle, and deeply affectionate. He listened to her. He wrote long messages. He made her feel seen in a way she claimed no man ever had before. For months, even years, their emotional bond deepened. Then the truth exploded. Michael Jones did not exist. He was a fabrication, a stock photo identity, a mask. Behind that mask was Sumit Singh, a young man from India who admitted to catfishing Jenny. The reveal was devastating. Jenny was humiliated. Viewers were furious. It should have ended there. For any reasonable person, that betrayal would have been unforgivable. But Jenny stayed. And that decision became the foundation of one of the most controversial arcs in the history of 90 Day Fiancé. For over a decade, cameras followed Jenny and Sumit through endless cycles of conflict. His parents rejected her. His culture rejected the relationship. Lies piled on top of lies, including the shocking revelation that Sumit was secretly married to another woman while continuing his relationship with Jenny. Each time, viewers asked the same question: why does Jenny stay? And each time, the answer we were given was love. True love. Messy love. Painful love. But real. Eventually, after years of struggle, Sumit divorced his wife, cut ties with his family, and married Jenny. The narrative was complete. The redemption arc was sealed. A liar learned his lesson. A woman followed her heart. Love won. But what if love didn't win? What if something else did? According to a new alleged whistleblower testimony, the original catfishing incident was not a one-off act by a lonely young man experimenting online. It was, allegedly, his job. The whistleblower claims that Sumit was part of an organized, professional romance scam operation operating out of New Delhi. A small, highly trained call center-style network that specialized not in quick cash grabs, but in long-term emotional manipulation. According to this account, Michael Jones was not Sumit's personal invention. It was a company-owned identity, a reusable asset, a persona with a script, a backstory, psychological triggers, and a proven success rate. And Jenny, according to this claim, was never meant to be his life partner. She was meant to be a target. The whistleblower, who asked to be identified only as Rohan, says he worked alongside Sumit more than a decade ago. He describes Sumit not as impulsive or romantic, but as quiet, patient, disciplined, and effective. In the office, employees were trained to play characters for months, sometimes years, cultivating emotional dependency before slowly introducing financial requests. Not always directly. Sometimes through fabricated emergencies. Sometimes through investment opportunities. Sometimes through temporary help. The goal was not speed. The goal was attachment. Rohan claims that Jenny became an anomaly because she refused to disengage. She wanted more than the script allowed. She wanted real-world contact. And when Sumit broke protocol Rohan says the company expected the relationship to end once the lie was exposed. That usually happened. Victims either disappeared in shame or cut contact completely. Jenny didn't. She forgave him. She doubled down. She showed up in India. And suddenly, what was supposed to be a controlled operation became something the company could no longer manage. Cameras arrived. Contracts were signed. And according to Rohan, the operation made a calculated decision: disappear. Sumit left the company. The call center shut down or rebranded. And the story was reframed for television. What had allegedly been a criminal operation was transformed into a tragic love story. This is where the story stops being about one couple and starts becoming about something much bigger. Because if this allegation is even partially true, it raises terrifying questions. How many other Michaels were there? How many other women were groomed, manipulated, and financially drained? How many never got answers? And how many stories ended in silence instead of a TLC wedding special? Rohan says the guilt never left him. Every time he saw Jenny cry on television, he saw a target who crossed the line into real life. Every time Sumit defended himself as a man who made a youthful mistake, Rohan saw a colleague who followed training. When a true crime documentary about modern romance scams aired years later, Rohan claims it finally broke him. He recognized the terminology, the pacing, the emotional hooks, the phrases. It was all too familiar. That's when he decided to contact an investigative journalist. Not for money. Not for fame. But, he says, because silence made him complicit. The journalist initially doubted him. Reality TV attracts rumors like fire attracts oxygen. But Rohan had details. Office layouts. Training schedules. Persona libraries. Scripts. Internal nicknames. And most importantly, he had one name that mattered. Michael Jones. According to Rohan, Michael Jones was the company's most successful profile. A widowed English engineer. Emotionally available. Old-fashioned. Gentle. Safe. Exactly the type of man many older Western women felt comfortable trusting. The photos were licensed. The story was tested. The results were consistent. Until Jenny. And this is where part 1 ends. Because in part 2, we will go deeper into how these personas were built, how the manipulation worked, and why Jenny's refusal to walk away may have forced Sumit into the only role left to him, turning a failed assignment into a lifetime commitment. If part 1 questioned the foundation of Jenny and Sumit's love story, part 2 exposes the machinery that allegedly built it. According to the whistleblower, the most dangerous part of the operation was not the fake photos or the fake names. It was the emotional engineering. New recruits were taught that money was not the first objective. Control was. Emotional dependency came first. Financial extraction came later. Targets were studied carefully. Their loneliness, their family situations, their past traumas, even their daily routines were logged and analyzed. Conversations were not spontaneous. They followed flow charts. If the target expressed insecurity, reassurance was deployed. If the target expressed fear of abandonment, future promises were escalated. Love was not felt. It was simulated. Rohan claims that Michael Jones was never played by just one person. The persona belonged to the company, not the individual. Shifts were sometimes rotated. Messages were pre-approved. Certain emotional milestones were scheduled. The widower story existed for a reason. It disarmed suspicion. It explained emotional depth. It justified slow physical escalation. It created trust without urgency. According to Rohan, Jenny responded faster and deeper than most targets. She invested emotionally almost immediately. She shared personal stories. She expressed loyalty early. This made her both valuable and dangerous to the operation. Problems began when Jenny insisted on video calls and real-world meetings. According to protocol, this was where most operations disengaged. Excuses were made. Emergencies were invented. The persona would slowly fade. But Sumit, according to the allegation, broke protocol. Whether out of guilt, curiosity, or miscalculation, he chose to reveal his real identity instead of disappearing. Inside the operation, this was considered catastrophic. Exposure was the one thing they could not afford. But instead of reacting with anger, Jenny forgave him. That response was unprecedented. Rohan claims that management initially believed the situation would self-correct. They assumed Jenny would eventually withdraw, embarrassed or angry. When she didn't, panic set in. Sumit meeting Jenny